Hi, Mike. Can you hear me? You are muted. Nope.
Valve.
Oh, now you. Okay.
There we go. I wasn't muted. I have an amplifier with a Valve preamp, which takes a bit of time actually to warm up. So I hadn't turned it on. I thought I had, so apologies for that.
I see. Okay. Hi, Steve.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yes, indeed,
Welcome to 25.
Yes.
Yes.
Almost our fiscal 26.
Oh, don't do that. Don't need that sort of rubbish.
Yeah, I'm not the CFO, so not my call.
Be thankful for small mercies, then I guess. I'm going to fill up my tea, I think.
Just gonna give it a couple more minutes for additional folks to join, and then we can talk. So, Mike, I sent an email to my boss this morning. So it's about JP Morgan joining as a member of the consortium, and given that our CISO now has an interest in confidential computing, even had a presentation with Anjuna. So looking.
Who are they?
Yeah, and we now have a couple open recs, to start exploring things. So that, and also, I told him that maybe benefit in that we have government relations people, which are as removed from technical people as you'd expect.
Yes,
I honestly don't even I don't even know who they are. I have to go through layers to identify them. So right, so that may be the that may actually ease certain things because they have knowledge and experience. But anyway, I'll get back to you what he says. The membership fee is clearly not an issue for us.
If you need references for consultants or employees, let me know.
Yeah. Well, we as I said, we have a couple of recs now, but they're in the data protection team, and it's just one of now several reasons that I personally believe would benefit.
I just thought it made sense to point out because it's a bit awkward if you're not, but if you are, then I think we can definitely find things. In fact, it made me think maybe we should have a jobs board as part of the CCC, or a sort of sideboard, or somewhere to keep it
accessible to members, whatever. All right.
Exactly.
So welcome to 25. Let's get started. We'll see if additional people join. I have sent out sort of a draft agenda that I wanted to work through today, and I think which might as well just dive in. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Well, that's pretty much what you would expect, but all right, so let me see. What am I sharing? I'm sharing this. Okay, let me know if I need to zoom in. Happy to do so. Do you see my screen?
Yeah, a little tiny, but
all right.
It is a bit small, yeah.
I can read the top part. CCC.
Oh no, it's a 37-inch screen. So yeah. How's this?
That's better, thank you.
Okay, so anyway, for now, let me drop the link to this to the chat, and so you can start typing away or commenting away. Hi, Chris.
Much easier to read.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a little draft I threw together for us for the things that are on my horizon. The first thing is anything major missing from this list?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the CRA a little bit.
The what?
Cyber Resilience Act, the EU legislation piece. I'm going to be talking about it generally, but this is a particular group where I think there's relevance. So
Okay, so that would be government under government entities, probably.
Yeah, probably. It's more how it's going to impact us. It's resilience rather than resiliency as well, bizarrely. Well, where it is, what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, we can.
Yeah.
I'll give you an intro and that sort of stuff.
Okay, but let's just get the sort of the big
And
picture
I'm
goals
assuming
down first.
And I'm assuming NIST and MITRE fall under industry bodies.
NIST is government. Yeah, industry bodies would be like PCI DSS
or CSA,
but,
right?
Or CSA.
CSA is an industry body. Yeah, but I basically said outside of CSA because I think with CSA we are locked and loaded. In fact, the two things that we discussed with CSA yesterday is, but this is not just that's not just a GRC thing. It's more of technical collaboration. So I'm not bringing it to this forum, but just for information, looking into IoT collab and zero trust collab, but they're not strictly governance.
And the AI collaboration.
And AI, yeah. So there are all these working groups that we need to start speaking with. Chris, you have your hand up. Unmute yourself.
Good morning. I don't know if you consider it to fall under the charter here, but one aspect of government interaction is building awareness and taking advantage of government funding for R&D. And so that's different from policy work, and it's different from governance frameworks. Do you feel like that kind of activity is in scope for the GRC? It may not be. Maybe it belongs in the TAC, but I'm curious about your thoughts.
I think this is more a question for Mike because I think funding is always top of mind. So if we can get some funding, you know, that's
interesting. So are we talking funding for the CCC? Are we talking funding for
No.
projects or what sort of thing?
For projects. So for example, when we hear from there's an NSF Frontiers research team, university-based, that is funded by the National Science Foundation to do work in confidential computing. Is creating those kinds of opportunities or being aware of those kinds of opportunities something that the CCC should be doing at all? And if so, should it be in the SIG or some other SIG?
We have a little in the past. So a year ago, just over a year ago, I attended a DARPA meeting in San Francisco that was focused on using confidential computing for like effectively online skiffs. So a skiff, if you don't know what it is, I'll explain. But they were basically exploring how to do that with that technology, and I don't know what came of it, but they certainly collected a lot of feedback. Yes,
What's a skiff?
Huh?
What is a skiff?
It's a secure compartmentalized information facility. It's effectively a vault where people. So when Biden took documents out of a skiff, it's a crime.
Got it. So I remember now reading about it. It's like an area inside the White House where you have to go in there to view specific documents.
Correct.
Well,
I've watched a number of spy things recently where they said, let's go into the skiff. So.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, any facility can have a skiff in it. When I was a defense contractor, we always had a couple of them in the office. So if you needed to go work on something classified, you went into the skiff.
Yep.
So that
anyway,
was...
but that was a DARPA thing. But yeah, these things do happen. And the frustration for me has been inability to penetrate government organizations. So like Chris, I believe if I'm not mistaken, you helped us with the ICO collab. So that was sort of a bright light. But we haven't really had much success with NIST or FISA or FINRA. So that is where, like, and not for lack of trying, they seem to be hitting sort of a bit bucket.
My general view, or what we've done previously is kind of been reactive. If people have become aware of things, then we're very happy to share, among the members and try and make a noise like that. But the amount of work required in sort of going out and looking for them is something that, and the benefit that accrues to members and to the ecosystem is difficult. I think becomes difficult pretty quickly. So I think being reactive certainly makes sense. If we have specific things we want to chase after, then and people have links to those, then I'm very happy to support that as well. But I'm not sure what our return on doing it directly and being proactive and looking for them.
Yeah, it's been a little bit like online dating. You send the messages, but they don't respond.
Bit like what?
Even when
Sorry?
we did try to go proactive, there was like little in way of engagement back. And I even tried some individuals who have fairly high profile in the industry, and I received some referrals, and then I followed up on those referrals, and there was like literally nothing. So as I
I've
said,
reached out to some NIST folks as well. Contacts within Microsoft have forwarded me their addresses, and it's just not the right people.
right. So and again, I think actually folks in large institutions like Microsoft, like Google, they that actually have government outreach like lobbyists in Washington, D.C., whatever. You need to broker those conversations through them. So I will certainly try again through my employer. But Alec, you may want to try following through the government relations people, like the Brad Smith organization. This literally belongs in there for some of that.
And again, I tried, and I just didn't get any responses at all. Maybe I need to try again. It's probably
perhaps, or maybe have them try on your behalf,
Yeah.
right? Because you're just some program manager somewhere, and they probably want to talk to somebody they already have a pre-existing relationship with.
I didn't think it was that obvious, but obviously I need to polish up my reputation a little bit.
Maybe you need to wear a three-piece suit, and a nice watch. Anyway, so another thing I wanted to clarify. So Mike and I had an offline conversation about the governing board taking on the role of like governance relations around specifically governance, because in this forum we've been technical, and we're actually doing, I will say, a better job of elucidating technical requirements around the governance for this technology than pretty much anything else I've seen. Right, because like the moment you start going to the levels of like FINRA, your control statements are so generic that there is no room for technology-specific solutions, or almost no space. Right, so this is what I told Mike in the offline email.
So let me give a bit of sorry.
I basically said, you say data and use protection, and then fully homomorphic encryption is yet another avenue, and then they're not going to go into the details of how do you govern your verifier and how do you govern your secure channels or anything like that.
So yeah, let me give a bit of background from conversations in the governing board. There have been people saying, we want to talk, policy to, the high-level EU folks, or, particular parts of the, the Singapore folks, or the UK folks, or US folks as well. And it really is sort of policy and standards wonks who want to be getting involved. And that's kind of not what this group is doing. And we did, doing great work on the stuff you are doing. And also, it would be probably under the GB or under the TAC, so not a technical focus thing. Now, I would hope that as some of those conversations progress, some of them would end up in this group or under the TAC. But the GB is kind of interested in setting up such a group, and I wanted to sort of pre-warn this group. It's not about trying to take stuff away. It's trying to work out how best to allow the things that are happening well here happen, and to sort of have a complementarity. And it doesn't mean people can't be in both groups as well, of course, if this is those things are interesting.
How I see this, Mike, is feel free to take over anytime for specifically for that level of
I'm-
outreach. And let's do what we can right now while all of that is being stood up, and then we'll hand it as soon as you guys are ready to go and run off with it, then go.
Okay, fantastic. I'll take that back to the GB. I think it makes life a lot easier that this group, unless I'm hearing anything from anyone else in this group, but it sounds like people are generally supportive of that
specifically,
approach.
the biggest challenge has been having these people respond and recognize us, and whoever has the best capability of doing that, like I believe Chris did with ICO, so we were actually able to do privacy preserving technologies. Those would be the kinds of engagements that we just we have the capacity of doing, but not the opportunity. And then the attempts to create opportunity have failed.
I wanted to check that everyone else in the group takes the same sort of view, and that we're not having dissent generally. Chris, Alec, Steve, are you kind of happy with that approach?
Well,
Yes.
I'm not sure what the approach is, but I personally have had very good experiences engaging with the government. And an example I put in the chat is in working with the NSF to create a program on privacy enhancing technologies that several CCC members learned about through a presentation in the TAC. I know that some of the companies applied for funding under this, and some of a lot of universities.
Yeah, so this isn't funding. This is absolutely about regulators.
Yeah, the idea that I proposed was about funding.
Okay,
yeah,
sure. So
maybe we're on a different topic.
We kind of moved on to a different topic. Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's right. So the idea is a new regulator engagement SIG is stood up probably under the GB. Obviously, people in this are welcome to join as well, but that allows this group to concentrate more on the technical, and the other group to sort of do more policy and regulatory involvement stuff. Everyone happy on that?
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Cool.
happy on
Excellent.
that.
Again, and anyone who's in this group can of course be in the other one as well, but it gives different focus and allows other people to join who are put off possibly by some of the technical focus of this group.
So again, the challenge is not execution, and I'm happy with the governing board taking over the execution. The challenge is making it rain, like finding the people who'll talk to us. Okay, so let's move on from there. So eyes back on the list of goals. Of course we're free to revise them later, but I am I'm looking for sort of inputs into what are the things, because again, we'll complete the current slate of work that we have, but I would like to look a little bit beyond, and I don't want to make it work.
Yeah, so I mean, we have the current patterns. The pattern we need to make progress on is the break inspect pattern.
Yes.
That we add into the mix.
Yes.
And I think the patterns are something that when we go out to regulatory bodies or recommendation organizations like CSA, that's a body of work that we can say, this is what needs to fit into your regulation. So I think it's absolutely on point in what we need to wrap up.
So I think a very key benefit of confidential computing is going to be to identity governance. So
yes,
I can spend some time and justify this point of view, but also an observation here, kind of a tangent, that the patterns are not standalone; they kind of intertwine. So, for instance, verifier has a role to play in granting identity to things, and break and inspect actually meddles with identity. That again, I can sort of explain why I'm saying that, and ultimately, the way governance requirements are going to manifest is the kind of thing that you're going to see in the IAM domain and in the CCM. For instance, it will say you need to manage your human and non-human identities alike. There was, in fact, an OWASP email I just got this morning. There are like 10 types of non-human identities, which I'm yet to review. But there is industry movement towards ensuring that we have strong workload identity and like figuring out what the properties around that is. And all of that will require governance, and we can contribute to that. But it's going to, the blast radius of that identity governance may in fact be either sprinkled across all these patterns or may create its own pattern around identity governance for confidential workloads, right? So we'll see which way we go.
I'm sure you're familiar with my opinion that the identity properties of confidential computing long term are going to have the bigger impact than the isolation. And I know
Yeah,
originally
absolutely.
it was a side effect of isolation
Yeah,
and
it's an
knowing what the
inversion. It's an
workload is.
inversion relationship. Now, let
Uh,
me say this, because I was in a meeting yesterday. I was in the interim meeting of the WIMSI. So WIMSI is workload identity for multi-system environment. I was in the interim meeting of the WIMSI working group. And this is what they were discussing. Let me show this document. They were discussing this new draft, version 3 of WIMSI.
Put a zoom there,
And
please.
yeah. And what you will see is this picture. And clearly, whenever you interact with a workload, you're going to be talking through a gateway, right? For anything that's non-trivial. And I kind of quipped yesterday. I said, well, today, when you use confidential computing, you effectively integrate with KMS. You start your workload up, and the workload gets a key from KMS, and then there's some data somewhere that's encrypted using this key. You download encrypted data, and you go operate on it. And that's like, that's a fantastic scenario. That's the only one that's actually enabled in the way that I can say it's done end to end. But it's like there are more ways to commute than on a motorcycle, right? And what we're looking to do is enable all sorts of applications to be uplifted, not just the ones that require your data to be encrypted using some key. Now, when this was discussed, and I basically said, look, guys, we need to also make sure that confidential computing will be backwards compatible with this, because this is for everything, not just for confidential workloads. But I basically said confidential workloads need to be in scope. Someone on the call basically said, look, here you have workload 1 and workload 2, and if workload 2 is updated from version, I do not know, 3.5 to version 3.6, all of a sudden its identity changes. If you read RAD's documents, that's exactly the conclusion you walk away with. And what the WIMSI working group said yesterday was, we're just not going to worry about confidential computing right now. Like, this is not a consideration for us, which I then responded, and I basically said, okay, I'm going to talk to you offline. I'm going to explain to you how that's actually not the case. But if we are not participating and we're not considering, these working groups and these, standards efforts, it doesn't serve us and it doesn't serve them. And we'll end up having to do like some important rectifying. Now, this gateway service is in fact covered by this document, which is the break and inspect governance pattern, right? And this is where I'm hoping to, take a look at it in terms of both, what break and inspect usually does in an enterprise today, and also how break and inspect manifests itself in this gateway service. Okay, so this is a long way of saying that we still have a work cut out for us to both formalize what this does and also how it integrates with all these other directions that we now have, like non-human identities, workload identity governance, standards development, like and this is probably the most complex piece we've tackled today. I will drop these links in the chat as well.
Thank you.
So this is the WIMSI architecture document. This is our forthcoming break and inspect governance pattern. Okay. So I'm kind of inclined to make another top level goal for 25, which is figure out, and I don't know, I'm going to put it generally. And there's a litany of things that we can do under that umbrella.
Yeah, I'm reading through Whimsy now as you shared the document, and they posit a workload identity without specifying how that workload identity is established.
Yeah.
And
Well, they
certainly,
leave a lot, right? They leave a lot. So for instance, there is a spiffy model. And the spiffy model says there is a node tester, and the node tester is the thing that will tell you what the node is. And then the node tester issues credentials to individual workloads on the node. That's not compatible with confidential computing unless you're looking at like SGX and local attestation. But under confidential computing, and it's like confidential containers, you get your identity directly from the firmware, and your node tester is just a credential provider proxy. So these models need to be reconciled, and we need. And this is we had like an hour-long conversation yesterday in the attestation SIG, which once it posts on YouTube, I encourage you to listen to. It started with a question from me, where I basically said where in the TAC we're going to handle workload like identities. And I, was thinking, well, is it a TAC thing? Is it an attestation SIG thing? Should we stand up a separate SIG just for the identity work? That conversation took up the entire meeting. So, that was not my expectation, but it's something that it's very, very important that we get this right.
Can you summarize, Mark, the discussion that you had with Greg Costel? I'd like to kind of dig in on that a little bit. It's from the discussion yesterday during the CSA meeting.
Yeah.
Sounded like it was relevant.
It was
might be some way
it was a typical Microsoft discussion requiring thick skin. So I basically asked him, okay, so here I am, customer, coming to you. Microsoft is like a wild card for a CSP.
I work with Greg a lot, so he and I are,
okay. So then I basically said, look, I have my army of developers who are, writing loan origination applications and, risk assessment applications in, I don't know, some sort of a high-level language like JavaScript or Python. The people you cannot, reasonably expect to write a spiffy node attestation plugin. That's just not their expertise, and it's not our line of business to be doing like framework level work. Like we will when we have to, but that's not what we like to do. I would like to understand with a application fleet that's in mid 4 digits. So I don't know, 6,500 applications, 5,000 applications, something that's large. And, some of them, increasingly more and more of them running in the cloud. These applications have compute units, have serverless units, have queuing units, have step functions, have databases, all of that. And I would like to understand how to do an uplift of my application fleet into the world where we have workload identities and we have attestation and, and how do I do this with a minimum disruption to the application developers who honestly couldn't care less and, shouldn't be made to care. And then Greg responded, with something very generic. And I said, Greg, what I heard you say is, and again, Microsoft here is a wild card. Microsoft doesn't have a clue. So he took a little bit of offense to that. But what was
Greg's response? What was Greg's response?
Well, he basically said, look, I'm not here representing Microsoft.
What was his response? What was his response? I don't want to hear characterizations of his response. I want to hear what was his response. Was his response
watch
all
the
this
video.
Stuff into CVMs? Was his response
no.
SQL Server, it's more secure? I mean, what did he say?
You will have to watch the video. I don't want to quote him, but the point is so what is the customer coming to a provider with? A need to perform this uplift and to satisfy upcoming regulatory obligations around managing workload identities, right? And what we don't have is any way of any code samples, any frameworks, any libraries, anything that can help us. And then we had this discussion around what does this actually mean to enable this kind of transition. And I can tell you what we would not like to do. Say, and I don't know if that is the case, but it's a good use case. Say we standardize our workload identity framework on SPIFFE or something like it. And then SPIFFE is not really something that handles attestation in a confidential computing compatible way, right? Ideally, it would be our CSP that gives us the tools to make our identity framework work with confidential computing. So you can
high level, if let's say you containerized all your, let's say the workflow was containerize your applications, measure all the layers in the containers, and then have an attestation framework that allows you to validate that each container layer met the measurement before you release any secrets.
That's part of the story, right? So if we were to standardize, if we were to standardize on SPIFFE, SPIFFE is going to be used for more than containers. Right, so it's more than just containers, but yes, it would be part of the jigsaw puzzle it's a little piece that we can put in there and say, yeah, this works. But other things need to work, databases need to work with it, and so on and so forth. Like step functions need to work with it, serverless need to work with it, right? Like if I'm standing up my serverless instance, how many round trips am I adding to my latency and other things, just getting that attestation done? There is a wealth of things that we need to consider, right? And so that is what we're asking for. And now, once that technical work is done,
I'll just point out here that it's funny how as soon as a customer, JPMC, asks for a secure way to have secure workload identity and you propose a solution, before you can even finish the sentence, the person says, well, wait a minute, what about performance? How many round trips is it going to take for me to, it's like, well, hang on a second, let's get it secure first before we talk about performance, but we can. So that's why it's always a little bit of a mashup, right? It's always a little bit of, we'll increase security as much as we can until it impacts performance. And that makes it hard for those of us that are security zealots.
Well, I guess we can have discussions around at what point in time you architect your security in or performance in, and everybody says my thing needs to go in first. But like, you can't retrofit security. Can you retrofit performance?
It's the classic triangle, right? You can have two out of usability, cost, and security. And I put performance under usability here. So you can have both, but it's going to cost you. And so that's kind of the game we have to play.
Yeah, well, and if you're a regulated institution and your banking license is at stake, you'll pay. So, and other institutions may, of course, have different trade-offs. Anyway, I do not seek to answer these questions here. I am just saying that in 25, we need to figure out as an industry what we're doing around workload identity. And governance is part of that, and performance and security and standards and protocols and SPIFFE, it's all feeds into it.
We're doing a lot of work in 2025, at least in Azure, to try and figure out how we can at least measure the workloads that are going into a T, be it a VM or be it a container, and report through attestation what the workload measurements are. That doesn't get you the identity of the thing that's requesting of your workload, but it does give you the identity of the workload to a certain extent. Obviously, there's going to be some code that has to run that you have to trust. So there will be an increase in the TCB because something has to do all this measuring. And you want it to be open source, and it probably will be. But as soon as you say open source, people ask about reproducible builds. That's going to take a minute.
Sure. And then, like, as you think about it, think almost gateway first, right? Because my client comes to the gateway says, this is my workload. Behind that curtain, there's a bunch of other stuff that's separately governed. And then that gateway, when it actually goes to this backend, how is it going? It's going as the client. So all of that needs to somehow work. And again, your target customer base is JavaScript, Python, doing things and not understanding the mechanisms at all. Okay. Anyway, so
Mark,
that's
just a quick question, if I may. You mentioned that there was some meeting. I might have skipped, missed. What meeting was it about?
So there was an interim meeting of Whimsy that we're talking about the version 3 of draft architecture, in which when I asked, is confidential computing going to be something that who would like to make backwards compatible with whatever you're doing, they basically said, well, at least one person on the call said, we're just not going to worry about confidential computing here because its identities are so fragile and subject to vagaries of measurements and whatnot. Again, that was never completed, that conversation, but then I brought it to the attestation SIG that happened literally in the following hour. And that conversation took a full hour, just like it's taking us a lot of time here.
Right.
Okay. So it's a
because you also
festering
mentioned
problem.
yeah.
But
because
the attestation SIG meeting was recorded, will be on YouTube. You can listen to that. I do not know about the interim Whimsy meeting. I think that was recorded too, but they use their own software. It's not Zoom.
Okay.
So, but you can go back and see what IETF has published about that meeting.
Why I'm asking, because you also mentioned Spiffy at some point, and I know that I've seen that there is interest in that. There was some open issues even on the Spiffy
Yes.
GitHub and so on, and it didn't go anywhere, but there is interest here and there.
Correct. There is definitely a need, and I can tell you that Spiffy is one of the things we are evaluating right now, so for like architectural fit, for not just this, but just as a way for us to manage workload identities and the life cycle of workload identities and integration with our development tools and basically like the whole end to end.
Yeah. So
right, and we are running into the fact that Node tester is not something that is generally computing compatible.
Right. So what I'm driving to, does it make sense for since Spiffy is has a certain adoption and there is interest there already. I don't know from who are those people who expressed interest on GitHub. Does it make sense for the Confidential Computing Consortium to have maybe a targeted focus on that and say okay,
you can count me as an interested party when it comes to Spiffy. We haven't committed to it yet, but we are very seriously looking at it.
So that could be something for the Confidential Computing Consortium or like this group or another committee to make a targeted effort this year to approach Spiffy, because it seems like it could be one of the lower hanging fruits.
Maybe, and also again, what do we consume? Okay, I'm an architect with a development background. This is not what our developers typically do. So the target consumer is not me, it's our Python, JavaScript, etc. Developers writing things, anything from website to loan origination apps.
It seems like if we were going to structure something within the CCC to take this on, it would have to be some sort of an identity tack, not governments and regulatory. We would be consumers of whatever identity recommendation came out of the identity.
That's a question for Mike.
Go ahead.
That's a question for Mike, because I think it could fall under attestation.
I dropped briefly because I had problems with my, everything. So what was the question? I do apologize.
how are we going to handle identity within the consortium? And the options are we can do separate SIG, or we can, task the attestation SIG with additional work on top of everything else they're doing. We could handle in the TAC, or we can.
Well, the answer is we asked the TAC what we should do about it. So the TAC is basically SIGs are products of a TAC decision. So if the TAC, if we can get enough people interested, and it sounds like they probably may well be, then spawning a SIG, or saying it will be a focus of the TAC, or will be a focus of the session group, or whatever.
Maybe put it on the agenda tomorrow if there's still room.
I think that's a very good idea. So if you want to get in touch with Dan, that's a very, very good call. Say that it's come out of this meeting as an interest of, well, everyone here, I guess, thinks this is an interesting and useful thing to be considering. I know that people like Manu Fontaine will also be very interested in pushing this. And I think it's a very interesting, if complex.
Dan Middleton, right?
Dan Middleton, yeah. So I think we'll get a lot of interest in it. Exactly how we move it forward is going to be the next thing, of course. But if we can attract interest, then we've at least got a starting point. So that would be my my strong advice.
I'll shoot an email to Dan CCU, and maybe there is still a room on the agenda tomorrow. Okay. So
is anyone here not interested in it as a topic? Sorry. Does everyone agree here that this is something that identity is an important thing to be looking at?
Yeah, and somebody reached out to me over Christmas. I'm trying to find the mail now about speaking at some sort of an identity conference.
It was Identiverse, probably.
That's it. That's what it was, and they wanted me to submit an abstract, but I don't know enough about identity.
And Identiverse is very specific around FIDO. We spoke at it last year. We had a panel, me, Manu, and a guy called Steve, who he knows, and it wasn't closely enough aligned that we decided it was worth doing again this year at this point.
Cool. Well, I'm glad I let that one pass.
Fortunately,
we certainly need to get in front of the identity folks, and if there's a spiffy conference, then boy, that seems like a good place to start, right?
I don't think it's an either or. I think it's an and, this and that and that. So between like Nikolai and Manu and people whose business it is to create identity frameworks, we have enough horsepower. All I'm saying right now is the business need is ever increasing, and there's a business opportunity here. And in fact, it's existential. If we don't get this right, we're not going to get adoption. Okay. Let's see. We're 43 minutes in. Do we have broad agreement on the goals coming back?
We do.
All right. So we'll again it will be a live document. We can come back to it. I would like to then propose that for next meeting that is going to be in 2 weeks. By the way, I am out 2 weeks from now, so I would need somebody to drive. But it would be great to have our existing patterns finalized, and so we have fewer things up in the air, and may ideally make some progress on break and inspect, which again I have a very early draft. Nikolai, I would love for you to take a look at it too. Do I have it? Did I put my break and inspect?
Where do you have the link to it? Is it in the notes?
Let's see. The bottom link in chat.
Okay.
That's the break and inspect pattern. And again, I just put a pen to it. It's not complete, but it's something that I would like to be fairly all-encompassing, like down to integration with tool chains. So what happens to my break and inspect when new software gets deployed somewhere, for instance?
Sounds good. I'll have a look.
Yeah, and then hopefully we can, at least start thinking about it, and then close on the comments and everything else, such as the verifier pattern. I just don't think we're going to finish that today, but it would be nice. By Q1, I would like to get all the in-flight patterns except for break and inspect over and done with. I don't have anything else for right now.
Do we want to take a quick look at the break and inspect doc and give some immediate feedback, or do we want to adjourn?
Can I just give you a brief overview of the CRA? Is that a useful thing to do?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so the CRA was signed into EU law end of November, I think, last year. It comes fully into force starting. So I've got a problem with my camera, so apologies for that. In 24 months, the first piece comes fully into force, and then 36 months from there. So end of next year is where things are happening. And basically, what it says is that any product with digital elements in it, so that can be a piece of hardware, it can be software, an app that is working, which is sold within the EU, basically, is subject to compliance. And the level of compliance, and a bunch of other stuff. And the level of compliance depends on whether it's something that is likely to have cybersecurity impact if it fails. So, for instance, a smart camera would be higher than just an app that, I don't know, checks the temperature in your house, for instance. And not only those pieces, but also, for instance, if you're running a service or a website which is required by that service, then that also comes under. So let's say you've got an app on a phone and it requires a database or a service running in the States, that database comes under the Act. And there are a number of things. Firstly, you need to get the CE mark, you need to prove compliance, and that can be self-compliance for low security issues, low security PDEs. But even that requires you to do a risk assessment, to do architectural review, and all those sorts of things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is a big one, you are not allowed to release a product with PDEs into the EU if it has known vulnerabilities or any of its dependencies have known vulnerabilities. A single one, which is a big deal. So that's interesting. You need to have a vulnerable, again, for certain classes, it depends on the different class, but you need to have a vulnerability management process which can respond within 24 hours of a vulnerability being provided, and that includes updates. And if they have an incident, a security incident, again, depending on the class, you need to be able to respond within 72 hours. So 24 hours for the first one, 72 for the other. So it's a huge raising of the bar for anything digital, which might have security implications, which basically counts everything which is connected these days.
Yep.
And this is relevant to the CCC in a number of ways. Firstly, there are specific regulations or parts of regulation applied to open source. So open source projects are treated differently to paid for products, and that's important. Secondly, anything which is using a TEE or an AVS probably is covered, right? So you care about this. And thirdly, in order to, things like, part of your architectural compliance information is going to almost certainly include things like an SBOM, and which is mentioned specifically by name, and making sure that those are created in a way which is as secure as possible, presumably in CC, is another reason that this may be interesting. So basically, anyone involved with confidential computing, whoever wants to have anything to do with the EU, probably needs to be paying attention. The LF, Linux Foundation, is involved intimately with this and has managed to get a seat on the list of folks who are getting involved with the further definitions of this and asking questions and stuff. And the OpenSSF, which is a Linux Foundation project, is steering the LF's work in this context. I represent the CCC in that work, and in fact, we're waiting for ratification, but I am like to be co-chair of the coordinating body for that. The plan is to get some money from the OpenSSF, so it doesn't all come from the CCC. But the point is that I am, that the GB has absolutely given me a mandate to find out what this means to the CCC and to start communicating that as we go. So that's kind of where we are, and it's clearly relevant to this group. What exactly the relevance will be is TBD. But that's kind of where we are.
You got a link to more information, or like actually not more, but a good background around this?
There's very few good backgrounders on this at the moment. The OpenSSF is trying to put one together. Actually, I'll tell you what. There's the open. This is the GitHub for the main thing that's going on here at in OpenSSF. So this is the cyber policy working group. It doesn't mention the CRA as the only thing because the plan is for it to deal with other related regulations, but this will be one of that's going to be the main focus to start with. So that's kind of where we are.
So I'm looking through so your read of this, Mike, is anything with a TE is going to fall into a critical class 1 application in the categories as opposed to a default category?
Yeah, I find it difficult to believe that it won't, possibly in class 2.
Yep.
So Chris is referring to there's a list of different types of applications that have differing compliance requirements. Class 2 is kind of the highest. There are different requirements for automotive, for health, for national security, and critical infrastructure, but these are the main ones. And class 2 is kind of the highest. Class 1 is the next down, and they're counted as important. And then there's ones which don't fit in either of those as well. But yes, Steve, that is much.
Clarify, I guess they will not become class 1 or 2 just because they're running a TE. It's because of the context in which they will be using. The fact that it's just a TE in itself doesn't make it class 1. That's my
well. This is unclear, and it's one of the questions we really need to get clarified, right? Because one of the I'm just finding the list. It's Appendix 7, I think. High risk AI. No. I can't find it. So this is one of the questions that is that we don't have a good answer for yet, and it's absolutely on the list of things that we need to understand. Because if just using something that is in the list of class 1 or 2 means that you become a class 1 or class 2 by dependency, then that's interesting. But yes, I think most things will be anyway because the sort of things they're being used for are class 1 or class 2. Otherwise, you wouldn't bother. You're muted, Nicola.
Thank you. That's exactly what I mean. Like TEs would likely be used in solutions that are class 1 or 2, but the fact that a TE is used in itself doesn't make it class 1. Here's I found a random website.
Yeah, indeed. So so that's a short list. There's a longer list too.
Yeah.
But so for instance, class 2 has hypervisors and container runtime systems.
Yeah.
And hopefully, just because you use a hypervisor or container runtime system doesn't make you a class 2, because if so, everyone is completely screwed. I don't expect that to be the case.
Right.
So yes, I think generally we're in agreement there.
We're this is getting close, but TEs are not necessarily temper resistant.
Well, no, they're not. But one of the things in class 1 is microprocessors or microcontrollers with security-related functionalities, and that is clearly a TE. Is clearly includes TEs, and so TE supporting microprocessors are definitely class 1.
Exactly. So there's a very high risk that it's getting there. So I think it's important to investigate this, because it will definitely impact the
Yeah,
how
let me just copy and paste the full list of class 1 and class 2 as published in the final documentation. I can't. I've got problems with Zoom for some reason. Did that paste? It didn't, did it? Try again. I think I'm trying to paste too much in. Stupid thing.
Or you just share a screen to show.
I will try. One second, let me just find the right thing, because I opened the wrong doc to start with. Just give me a minute. Come on. No. Okay, right. So let me try sharing screen now. So I'm just trying to find the right. This should be the right one. Is that sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are class 1 and class 2. Let's see if I can make it a bit bigger for you.
Thank you.
So yeah, there's lots of stuff in there, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Internet connected toys.
Yep. Which I think is great, honestly. Wearables, right? This is health tracking. These absolutely can be very bad. And the thing here is that this is looking at the consumer's possible exposure to bad folks, rather than saying, how can we make something more secure? It's more about saying, well, how can we stop bad things happening to consumers, which is very much the EU approach rather than the US approach, right?
This is like everything. Anything that's got an ASIC or an FPGA in there, it's going to be a class 1.
No, not necessarily. So the ASIC is, and this is kind of the question that Nikolay is asking, does the fact that it uses it make it class 1? Probably not. Because otherwise, as we said, if that would mean that anyone who used a hypervisor or a container runtime system would be class 2, which I don't think is sane, right?
However, this should be viewed as linked with the SBOM, and well, if your component uses an ASIC, well, the ASIC should be, of course, explicit.
Yes,
it is, and
absolutely
it falls into class 1.
And the stuff around how you comply is, where are we? I read this the day it came out. It took me 3.5 hours to read it, and it wasn't a fun after. Oh yeah, and then of course there's these ones, critical, which are even more important. So smart card SIM devices including secure elements. So what's a secure element? Well, that's a TCG phrase.
Can you drop this link as well, Mike?
secure.
No, because this is on my what's that? Let me find the best way to find it is by going to documents, regulations, and right. If you go from there, you should be able to find it.
But just while you're sharing it, based on my discussions that I had, like, okay, what's a smart card? Well, a smart card is a SIM card, for example. A smart card, it can also be like, you know, a chip in a credit card. But also, I think in the implementations that we have for TDX and SCV/SMP, you know, the PSP in the AMD platform, that might qualify as a, you know, secure.
So, and these are reasons we need to be asking lots of questions, and why everyone in this group, everyone in the CCC probably needs to care about this. And so that's why I have a mandate from the GB to look into this, and that I will absolutely be doing. So at the top of the hour, thanks. I'm sorry to scare people if it was indeed scary, but yeah, we've got lots of work to be done. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers, folks. Good to see you. Thanks for the time.
Take
Mark,
care.
appreciate it. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.